I found out my son was married from the woman who made sure I wasn't invited. She didn't whisper it. She didn't hesitate. She stood in my kitchen, scrolling through her phone like she was checking the weather, and said, "Oh, by the way, we got married yesterday." It was small. Just for special people. Yesterday. I remember the exact sound my refrigerator was making when she said it. A low humming noise, steady and indifferent, like the world didn't notice mine had just shifted. I had always imagined I would know when my only son got married. I imagined being there when he straightened his tie, imagined fixing his collar like I used to before school pictures. I imagined sitting in the front row, crying quietly while pretending I wasn't crying at all. Instead, I was standing barefoot on my own kitchen tile, holding a dish towel, being informed after the fact. Special people. I nodded like a polite stranger. "Oh," I said. "That's nice." Nice. That was the word I chose while something inside my chest cracked open. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was careful. Controlled. Like she had rehearsed it. Then she added, "We didn't want drama. We just wanted peace." Drama. I raised that boy alone after his father left when he was 7. I worked double shifts at the hospital. I missed birthdays. I packed lunches at 5 in the morning. I drove him to football practice even when I was so tired my hands trembled on the steering wheel. If I was drama, I had earned it. But I didn't say that. I've learned that sometimes silence is louder than shouting. After she left, I stood in that same kitchen for a long time. The house felt different. Quieter. Bigger in a way that made me feel small. I kept replaying the word special in my head. Was I not special? Or was I too familiar? I called my son that night. I didn't want to sound emotional, so I waited until I was calm. At least I thought I was. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, Mom." His voice sounded normal. Too normal. "I heard you had a big day," I said lightly. There was a pause. Not long. Just long enough. "Yeah," he said. "It just kind of happened. Kind of happened. Like rain. Like traffic. Like something accidental." "You couldn't call me?" I asked. "It was last minute," he replied quickly. She wanted something private. Just a few close friends. No pressure. Close friends. I swallowed. "I'm your mother." "I know, Mom." "It's not like that." But it felt exactly like that. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't accuse. I said, "I hope you were happy." "I was," he said softly. That was the only thing that mattered. At least that's what I told myself after I hung up. That night, I walked into his old bedroom. I hadn't changed it much. His trophies were still on the shelf. His high school graduation photo still leaned slightly to the left because he had hung it himself and refused to let me fix it. I sat on the edge of his bed and remembered the day he was born. I was 23 and terrified. I held him in my arms and promised him that no matter what happened, he would never feel alone. And now here I was, feeling exactly that. Over the next few days, I tried to convince myself it wasn't personal. Young people do things differently. Elopements are trendy. Small ceremonies are modern. Maybe I was being old-fashioned. But something didn't sit right. It wasn't just that I wasn't invited. It was that I wasn't told. There's a difference between choosing small and choosing secret. A week later, I saw pictures online. Not from my son. From one of her friends. White dress. Outdoor venue. String lights. A small but beautiful setup. Maybe 20 people. Her parents were there. Her sister was there. 2 of her coworkers. Even a neighbor I recognized from their apartment complex. I zoomed in on every face. I wasn't looking for myself. I was looking for the space where I should have been. And there was none. That's when the truth settled into me, heavy and undeniable. This wasn't about size. It was about position. I had been repositioned in my own son's life. Shifted from front row to background. From family to optional. I tried not to let it change me. I still sent him a text the next morning. "I love you. I hope you're settling in well." He replied with a heart emoji. A heart. I used to get long messages. Now I got symbols. 3 days later, I received a call from my bank confirming the automatic transfer for his rent was scheduled for the following week. I had almost forgotten about that arrangement. When they moved into their apartment 6 months ago, he told me it was temporary. Just until he got a raise. Just until they stabilized. I agreed without hesitation. He didn't even have to finish the sentence. That's what mothers do. But now, standing in my quiet living room, holding my phone, something felt different. I asked myself a question I had never asked before. If I wasn't important enough to witness the most important day of his life, what exactly was my role now? Was I still mother? Or had I quietly become support staff? I hated myself for even thinking that way. Love isn't supposed to keep score. It isn't supposed to measure invitations against bank transfers. But pain makes you honest. That evening, I opened the old wooden box where I kept his childhood drawings. Stick figures of us holding hands. Crayon hearts. A Mother's Day card that said, "You are my best friend." I traced the faded letters with my finger. When did best friend turn into afterthought? I don't blame him entirely. I know how love can pull you. I know how marriage rearranges loyalties. But respect shouldn't disappear in the process. And that's what hurt. Not the wedding. The exclusion. The decision made without even considering how it would feel. I didn't sleep much that night. Around 2 a.m., I sat at my kitchen table in the dark and made a quiet promise to myself. I would not beg for a place in my own child's life. I would not compete. I would not chase. If I was meant to be included, I would be included. If not, I would learn to stand differently. I didn't know then how soon that promise would be tested. But a week after the wedding, my phone rang. And when I saw her name on the screen, I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been soft for years began to harden. Not into bitterness. Into clarity. And I had no idea that the next conversation would change the entire direction of our relationship forever. I stared at her name on my phone for a few seconds before answering. I don't know what I expected. An apology, maybe. An awkward attempt to include me. A delayed explanation about the wedding. Instead, she skipped every polite formality. "The rent is overdue," she said. "Did you transfer it?" No hello. No small talk. No mention of the wedding that had quietly erased me. Just money. For a moment, I genuinely thought I misheard her. "I'm sorry," I asked. "The rent," she repeated, slightly sharper this time. "It's due today. The landlord already emailed us. Did you send the transfer?" There it was. The role I apparently still played. Not mother of the groom. Not family. Sponsor. I felt something strange happen inside me. Not anger. Not even sadness. Clarity. The kind that arrives when confusion finally gets tired. "I haven't sent it," I said calmly. There was a pause. Then a small, impatient exhale. "Why not?" Why not? I looked around my quiet living room. The same house where my son learned to walk. The same walls that heard his laughter, his teenage arguments, his dreams about the future. I wasn't part of that future anymore. But I was apparently part of the payment plan. "Didn't I tell you?" I asked gently. "Tell me what?" she replied, defensive already. "That I only show up for special occasions." Silence. Real silence this time. I could almost hear her replaying her own words from a week ago. Just for special people. Her tone changed instantly. "I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" I asked. Another pause. It was small. Private. We didn't want complications. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "And I'm a complication?" That's not what I said. But it's what happened. My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. For years, I had swallowed my feelings to keep peace. I had convinced myself that love meant adjusting. Bending. Shrinking. But shrinking eventually makes you invisible. "I've helped you both for 6 months," I continued. I never complained. I never asked questions. But I found out my only son got married after it happened. From you. In my kitchen. Like it was an afterthought. It wasn't like that, she insisted. It felt like that. There's a difference. She shifted tactics. We're struggling right now. This isn't the time for emotional stuff. We need the rent. Emotional stuff. That's what she called it. My exclusion. My hurt. My place in my own son's life. Reduced to emotional stuff. I felt something inside me settle firmly into place. "You're adults," I said quietly. "Married adults. You made a life decision without me. That's your right. But adulthood also comes with responsibility. So you're just not going to help, she asked, disbelief rising in her voice. I'm saying I won't be treated like an ATM. The word hung in the air between us. She didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was colder. Fine, she said. I'll tell him. You should, I replied. She hung up without saying goodbye. I placed my phone down carefully on the table, as if it were fragile. My hands were shaking now. Not because I regretted what I said, but because I realized something important. For the first time in years, I had chosen my dignity over my fear of losing him. That evening, my son called. His name lit up my screen, and I closed my eyes before answering. Mom, he started, already tense. What's going on? I imagine she told you, I said. She said you're refusing to send the rent. I am. Why? I could hear the frustration, the confusion, maybe even a little anger. Why didn't you tell me you were getting married? I asked softly. He went quiet. That's different, he said finally. No, I replied. It isn't. He sighed heavily. We didn't want drama. There it is again, I said. You both keep saying that. Do you know what drama is? Drama is betrayal. Drama is secrets. Drama is finding out your child got married from someone who clearly doesn't think you matter. It wasn't meant to hurt you. But it did. Another silence. I let it sit there. I didn't rush to fill it. You're making this about money, he said. No, I corrected him. You made it about money. I made it about respect. That's not fair. Is it fair that I supported you financially but wasn't important enough to witness your vows? He didn't answer. I love you, I continued. But love isn't blind support without boundaries. You're married now. That means building your own foundation. We're trying, he said quietly. Then try, I replied. Figure it out. Get a short-term loan. Talk to the landlord. Pick up extra shifts. That's what adults do. You've changed, he said, and I couldn't tell if it was accusation or realization. No, I whispered. I've finally stopped pretending. After we hung up, I cried. Not because I doubted my decision, but because growth hurts. For years, my identity had been wrapped in being needed, being the reliable one, the safety net. But safety nets are meant for emergencies, not permanent living. The next few days were heavy. No calls, no texts. I didn't reach out. That was the hardest part. Every instinct in me wanted to fix it, to send the money quietly and pretend the conversation never happened. But I knew if I did, nothing would change, and I would slowly disappear. On the fourth day, I received a short message from my son. We covered it. That was it. 3 words. I stared at them longer than I should have. Covered it. They had figured it out. No disaster. No eviction. No collapse. Just problem solving. I felt something unexpected rise inside me. Relief, not because they struggled, but because they survived it. Maybe I hadn't abandoned him. Maybe I had trusted him. That night, I sat alone in my living room again. The house was still quiet, still big, but it didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. For the first time since the wedding, I wasn't replaying what I lost. I was thinking about what I gained. Self-respect, clarity, a boundary. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if they would resent me or understand me. But I knew one thing. I was no longer willing to finance my own exclusion. And deep down, I sensed that this wasn't the breaking point of our relationship. It was the turning point. For a few days after that message, there was nothing. No calls. No updates. No casual check-ins. Just silence. I used to fear silence. I used to interpret it as distance, as rejection, as something breaking beyond repair. But this silence felt different. It felt like space. Like something was being rearranged behind the scenes. Still, I would be lying if I said it didn't hurt. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart reacted before my mind could catch up. Every time it wasn't him, I felt that small, familiar ache. I kept myself busy. I reorganized closets that didn't need organizing. I donated old clothes. I rearranged furniture in the living room like changing the position of a couch could shift the position of my life. But at night, when the house went quiet, the questions came back. Had I pushed too far? Had I made him choose? Was I becoming the difficult mother they had quietly labeled me as? One evening, about a week later, there was a knock at my door. Not a text, not a call, a knock. My heart jumped into my throat before I even stood up. When I opened the door, he was standing there, alone. He looked tired, not physically exhausted, but emotionally worn, like someone who had been carrying too many thoughts at once. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. That voice. No matter how old he gets, that voice still carries the little boy who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares. "Hi," I replied, stepping aside to let him in. He walked in slowly, looking around the house like he hadn't been there in years instead of weeks. "It looks different," he said. "I moved some things," I answered. We both knew I wasn't just talking about furniture. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he used to do homework, where we used to eat cheap takeout when I didn't have the energy to cook. I didn't offer coffee right away. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let him settle. After a moment, he spoke. "We fought," he admitted. "I didn't ask who started it. I didn't ask for details. I figured," I said gently. "She thinks you're punishing us," he continued. "Am I?" I asked calmly. He hesitated. "I don't know." I sat across from him and folded my hands on the table. "Do you feel punished?" I asked. He looked down. "I feel stuck between us." He nodded. I took a deep breath. "That's not where I want you," I said. "I don't want you choosing sides. I want you standing on your own." He rubbed his hands together nervously, something he's done since he was a teenager. "She says you're trying to control us with money." That one stung. "I've been giving you money," I said evenly. Control would have been using it to make demands. "I never did." He didn't argue with that. "I didn't realize it would hurt you that much," he admitted. "It wasn't just the wedding," I said quietly. "It was the message." "What message?" "That I'm useful, but not important." His head snapped up. "That's not true." "Then why wasn't I there?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. There are moments in life when explanations collapse under their own weight. This was one of them. "She thought it would be easier," he said finally. "For who?" He didn't answer. I leaned back in my chair and studied his face. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a married man. But I could still see the conflict written all over him. "I need you to understand something," I said carefully. "When you exclude me from something that big, it changes the foundation. It makes me question where I stand." "You're my mom," he said immediately. "Yes," I replied. "But I'm also a person." That seemed to land. "I didn't think about it like that," he said quietly. "I know," I answered. "That's part of the problem." He let out a slow breath. "She feels like you don't approve of her." "I don't know her well enough to disapprove," I said honestly. "We've never really had a chance." He looked surprised. "You never tried," he said. I felt a small spark of frustration. "I invited you both for dinner multiple times." She declined. I asked about her job, her family, her interests. She kept it surface level. I didn't push because I didn't want to overstep. He went quiet again. "Sometimes, when you say things calmly, they hit harder." "I don't hate her," I continued. "I just refuse to disappear." The room felt heavy but honest. He looked at me for a long time, like he was seeing me differently. "I didn't realize you felt replaced," he said. "I don't feel replaced," I corrected him softly. "I feel repositioned." "There's a difference." "How?" "Replaced means I'm gone. Repositioned means I'm still here, just further away." He swallowed hard. That wasn't intentional. Intent doesn't erase impact. We sat there with that truth between us. After a while, his shoulders relaxed slightly. "We did cover the rent," he said. "I picked up extra shifts. She sold some things online. It was stressful. But you managed." "Yeah." I nodded. "And how did that feel?" He thought about it. "Hard," he admitted. "But kind of good." I smiled faintly. "That's adulthood." He let out a short laugh, the first one since he arrived. "You sound like you rehearsed that." "I've had a lot of quiet nights to think," I replied. He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. It had been a long time since he did that. "I don't want distance between us," he said. "Then don't create it," I answered gently. "I'm trying." "I know." And I did know. That was the complicated part. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't malicious. He was navigating marriage, loyalty, pride, and ego all at once. But so was I. I need respect, I said softly. Not control. Not money. Just respect. You have it, he said quickly. Then show it. He nodded slowly. That night, we talked for hours. About expectations. About communication. About how marriage shifts dynamics, but shouldn't erase history. I didn't apologize for setting boundaries. He didn't ask me to send the rent again. When he stood up to leave, he hugged me longer than usual. I love you, he said into my shoulder. I love you too, I replied. After he left, I stood at the door for a long time. Something had changed. Not fixed. Not perfect. But clearer. For the first time since the wedding, I didn't feel like I was fighting for my place. I felt like I had defined it. And deep down, I knew the real test wasn't behind us. It was still coming. Because conversations are one thing. But loyalty, growth, and respect? Those are proven over time. The real test came sooner than I expected. About 3 weeks after my son visited me, I received a text from him. Can we come over for dinner? Both of us. Both of us. It was the first time since the wedding that the invitation included her without tension attached to it. I didn't respond immediately. Not because I wanted to play games, but because I wanted to answer from a place of calm, not emotion. Yes, I finally wrote back. Sunday at 6. The days leading up to Sunday felt strangely significant. I cleaned the house, but not obsessively. I cooked, but not extravagantly. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't auditioning for a role in my own family anymore. When they arrived, I noticed something immediately. They stood closer together than before, but not in a defensive way. More like a team that had survived something. She looked slightly nervous. That was new. Thank you for inviting us, she said as she stepped inside. You're welcome, I replied evenly. We sat down to eat. At first, the conversation stayed light. Work. Traffic. The weather. Safe topics. But tension doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. Halfway through dinner, she set her fork down. I owe you an apology, she said. The words surprised me. For what? I asked calmly. For how I handled the wedding, she replied. And for the phone call about the rent. My son looked at her, then at me. She continued, I thought keeping it small would avoid conflict. I didn't think about how it would feel for you. That was selfish. Selfish. It was the first honest word I had heard from her. I appreciate you saying that, I said. She swallowed before adding, and I shouldn't have called you like that. It sounded entitled. I can hear it now. There it was again. Growth. It's subtle, but you recognize it when you see it. I wasn't upset about the money, I said gently. I was upset about the message behind it. She nodded. I see that now. The air felt lighter. Not perfect, but lighter. After dinner, my son stepped outside to take a phone call, leaving the two of us alone in the kitchen. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked at me directly. I've always felt like you were judging me, she admitted. I considered that. I wasn't judging you, I said honestly. I was trying not to interfere. She frowned slightly. It felt distant. That's because I was trying to respect boundaries, I replied. But maybe I confused distance with respect. We both stood there, realizing something at the same time. Neither of us had truly tried to understand the other. We had both been protecting our positions. I don't want you to feel excluded, she said quietly. I don't want to feel unnecessary, I answered. Those two sentences changed everything. When my son came back inside, he looked between us cautiously. We're okay, she told him. He looked relieved in a way that made me realize how heavy this had been for him too. Over the next few months, something shifted in our dynamic. Not dramatically. Gradually. They stopped expecting financial help. In fact, my son insisted on paying for dinner when we went out. The first time he did, I almost argued out of habit. But I let him. And I saw the pride in his eyes. They began inviting me to small things. Not out of obligation, but inclusion. A friend's barbecue. A birthday gathering. A casual Sunday brunch. Nothing grand. But real. One evening, about 6 months later, they invited me over for dinner at their apartment. When I walked in, I noticed something different immediately. On the wall, framed and centered, was a wedding photo. In the picture, they were smiling under soft lights. And next to it, on a small shelf, was a framed photo of the three of us taken at that very dinner in my house months ago. Not hidden. Displayed. I didn't comment on it, but I saw it. During dessert, my son cleared his throat. "We've been meaning to tell you something," he said. I felt that familiar rush of anticipation. She reached for his hand. "We're expecting," she said softly. For a moment, the world slowed. A grandchild. I felt tears rise instantly, but this time they weren't from hurt. They were from hope. "We wanted you to be the first to know," my son added. The first. Not the last. Not after. First. That word healed something deep inside me. I reached across the table and held her hand. "Thank you," I said sincerely. Driving home that night, I thought about everything that had happened. The wedding. The rent. The silence. The confrontation. The apology. If I had sent that rent money without speaking up, nothing would have changed. I would have continued funding my own invisibility. Instead, I chose discomfort. And that discomfort created honesty. Honesty created boundaries. Boundaries created respect. And respect rebuilt connection. Being a mother doesn't mean holding on tightly forever. Sometimes it means stepping back so your child can step forward. Sometimes it means risking temporary distance to prevent permanent resentment. I still wasn't at their wedding. That memory would always sting a little. But now, when I look ahead, I don't see exclusion. I see evolution. I see a son who learned responsibility, a daughter-in-law who learned humility, and a version of myself who finally understood that love without boundaries isn't love. It's fear. I'm no longer afraid of losing my place, because I don't fight for it anymore. I stand in it. And this time, I'm not just included. I'm respected, and if this story meant something to you, if you've ever had to choose between love and self-respect, tell me in the comments what you would have done. I read every single one. And if you believe stories like this matter, stories about real families, real pain, and real growth, then subscribe to our channel and be part of this journey. Because here, we don't just share stories, we share strength.